Alright, so the great debate throughout the internet, which I thought was just in the comment section of my Prometheus video, but it's not, is whether or not Prometheus is officially an Alien prequel or a movie that takes place in the Alien universe but is not a prequel. And if you're gonna look for a quote from Ridley Scott, it's really not gonna help you. I mean, at first he was like, oh yeah, I'm making an Alien prequel. Then he was like, well, it's not an Alien prequel, it's a spin-off and it's called Prometheus. Then he was like, well, it takes place in the same universe as Alien, it has some alien DNA in it, but it's not a prequel. Then he was like, oh yeah, I'm making 2 Alien prequels, one of them's Prometheus, so no help there. Now this isn't a video saying whether or not Prometheus is a good movie. I have my review for that. In my review, you heard my take on whether or not it's a prequel. The Prometheus is not an Alien prequel. It's not. And now I'm gonna tell you why I think that. But first, let's define a prequel. A prequel is largely defined as a work that portrays events which include the structure, conventions, and or characters of a previously completed narrative, but occurred in earlier time. And in the case of Prometheus, I just don't think it qualifies. Now, if you disagree, I feel like we're gonna be like Jules and Vincent in Pulp Fiction talking about divine intervention. No one's gonna be like, oh, now I see, I agree with you now. Right off the bat, Prometheus has no characters from the movie Alien. Secondly, I am not convinced that the events of Prometheus directly affect the events of Alien. Mainly because it's on a completely different place. The planet in Alien and Aliens is LV-426. In Prometheus, it's some moon called LV-223. Completely different planet. So in my mindset, I'm like, anything that takes place on this moon LV-223 has nothing to do with the events of Alien. But Prometheus shows the story of the space jockey from Alien. No, it doesn't. That's on LV-426. This is LV-223. It shows the origin of the xenomorphs. That might be possible, and I might be able to buy that, but if the origin of the xenomorphs takes place on LV-223, how did they get to 426? And the space jockey we saw in Alien, that guy clearly had a xenomorph pop out of his chest. You can tell something ruptured his chest from the inside out. But Tom Skerritt said that that guy had been dead a long time. He's fossilized. Fossilized? That takes thousands of years. I'm pretty sure Prometheus does not take place thousands of years before Alien. So you gotta think to yourself, a xenomorph already popped out of that guy's chest thousands of years ago. So Prometheus is not the origin of the xenomorphs. They already existed. So alright, the big proto-xenomorph at the end of Prometheus, or the xenomorph queen, or whatever she is really insignificant if a xenomorph killed that space jockey supposedly thousands of years ago. I mean, this thing isn't the first xenomorph. And that's not even thinking about the fact that it shows this thing get birthed on LV-223, not LV-426, which is where Alien takes place. You see now? Do you see? Then if you take the xenomorphs out of the equation, people are like, alright, well it shows the space jockeys, it shows what they are. And it does, but I don't see how that makes it an official prequel. The only tie-in's like one fossilized dead guy, showing the species or race of what one dead fossilized guy was in the original movie that they showed briefly. It sounds like more of a spin-off to me. Definition of a spin-off? Something derived from an earlier work, such as a television show starring a character who had a popular minor role in another show. Yeah, the way I see it, it just sounds like a spin-off to me. This is gonna get really nerdy in about 3, 2, 1. Like, take Star Trek The Next Generation. They had the Borg in it. Star Trek Voyager showed the nest of the Borg, you know, where the Borg came from. It doesn't make Star Trek Voyager a sequel to Star Trek The Next Generation, does not make Next Generation a prequel to Voyager. And that's what I'm gonna call Prometheus. Prometheus is a spin-off. It's its own story that is a crossover for Alien. You have Prometheus, its own story, Alien, its own story, with a little bit of data that's overlapping. And then the argument is, well, then Phantom Menace isn't a prequel then. As much as I would love Phantom Menace to not be a prequel to the original Star Wars, it is. Because it has a few characters from the original trilogy. Obi-Wan Kenobi was in all 3 of the original movies, and he's in all of the prequels. Yoda's in 2 of the original movies, and in all of the prequels, and most importantly, Anakin Skywalker. You see him in the Phantom Menace, and you know, you're like, this is going to show how he becomes bad. This is what this prequel trilogy is all about. Now, if it didn't show Anakin Skywalker at all, then I'd argue, yeah, Phantom Menace might not be a prequel, but then you'd still have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. I would almost argue that calling Prometheus a prequel to the Alien movies is like calling Star Wars The Old Republic a prequel to the Star Wars movies. It takes place in the same universe, but it's not really a prequel. So if the Prometheus sequel stitches everything from Prometheus and Alien together, I'll be more inclined to consider Prometheus part of the Alien prequels. Yeah, the term can change depending on what they do in the next movie, but as it stands now, I consider it a spin-off. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I have to say about that. Now, this video hasn't locked down the entire argument. I get that. The argument will still exist months after I post this video. However, I'm interested to hear what you think about it. So Prometheus, prequel or not a prequel? Whatever you think, comment below, let me know. Discussions, why people exist. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.